we went looking for someone that we felt had a lot of information and knowledge, we came across Dr. Minier. And for those of you that are fellow BGSU Falcon alumni in this room.
10 bonus points, also anybody wearing orange.
Oh, there you go. There you go. Dr. Minier is currently on staff at BGSU, and he spends some time counseling some of, and you may own some of these. I own a college student. He does counseling for college students, especially some of those that are struggling, and he has quite a background in doing that. But he is also a part of NOET, the Northwest Ohio Educational Technology Foundation, and he spends a lot of time talking about these. And I think while we can say we really don't like doing it, you know, it's here. It's better to have the information. And he has some really good ideas about some ways, I think, that will help prepare your students, and also that will maybe surprise you in talking through organizations, professional organizations, and also to ODE about these assessments. And he's actually been a part of some things that have made some changes that make sense for students. So without further ado, if you would help me welcome Dr. Roger Minier.
Hey, that's pretty good applause for after lunch, thanks. Just a little bit more about my background. Classroom teacher for many years, taught primarily high school sciences, chemistry, physics, AP, chemistry, physics, physics, a little bit of advanced physics with calculus involved. So I've taught most of the content areas, also have an English certificate in there someplace or another. So I've taught most of the content areas I'm talking about today. The focuses are on the next generation tests, which are going to be the science, math, English language arts, reading, social studies. Did I get them all? Anyway, other content areas like math, music, like music, art, and so forth. Currently, we do not have online tests for them, but best guess, honestly, is online testing is here to stay, regardless of what you might hear with pending legislation. The specific standards and requirements that we are put to the test on, literally and figuratively, might modify a little bit, but we're going to be dealing with online tests. I'm going to talk to you why that probably really is a good thing, why you really want your students taking online tests, and what you can do to prepare for the online tests, and how you can do it really without adding much extra on your plate by doing it within the homework assignments that you give on a day-to-day basis. So with that in mind, we know that technology, when you use it well in the classroom, can be extremely effective. But when you use technology poorly, scores go down, learning goes down, and time is wasted. So what I hope to give you is real practical information. Everything I say is research-based, best practice, observational evidence, unless I say it's Roger's opinion. And when I say it's Roger's opinion, you can take that for what it's worth, one way or the other. But very, very specific strategies, things you can do literally starting today that should help improve your students' performance. Overall background is a little bit about the what and why of online testing, what you can do to prepare for testing, a little bit about content and hardware considerations, and then time for questions and discussions. As I go through this, if you have something that's really a burning question, raise your hand, but otherwise just jot it down, and I promise to allow time at the end of the session, and if we run out of time, I will stick around and be glad to answer your questions after I'm done with the formal presentation. And you can give me a call or email as well. So first off, taking a look at what we're facing in terms of a testing schedule, and this thing's pretty impressive. If we take a look, English language arts tests for grades 3 through 8 and in high school, they're going to be computer-based, and they're going to be, first ones are in February through March. Your building will decide exactly when the test dates are for your kids. Performance-based test in paper and pencil for some students. Science test in grades 5 and 8 as well as at the high school. Social studies tests grades 4 and 6 and at the high school. And then we have these end of course tests. And, sometimes hear them called end of year or EOY. And, sometimes heard them referred to as end of course or EOC. Depends on which subject area. I don't know, they can't get their act together to decide we're going to all call them the exact same thing, but they really are the same thing. They're a test that is basically what we used to call a regular exam or end of course exams. So these are the main ones we're looking at. I'm going to be focusing today on the PARCC assessments and talking about tips and strategies for the PARCC more so than the others, but the exact same skills and approach to preparing students for these assessments applies really to any assessment you're going to give your student. One thing that's really new, really different, you probably have heard a little bit about this, and it's very much worth considering and thinking about. There is no longer just one way to graduate from high school. Used to be, basically, you took the OGT, unless you had some special qualification and you got out of it and could take an alternative. But essentially, you either passed the OGT or you didn't get a high school diploma. The new laws, you can still take a graduation test, but you also have the option of graduating through your performance on the ACT or the SAT. So if a student, for whatever reason, does really well in the ACT, they don't have to pass these end of course tests in order to get out. You still have to accumulate a certain number of credits, but in terms of graduation test, you can do it from the ACT. Or, third way, you can do it by getting a certificate in your hand where that certificate says, I am qualified for a job. So 3 different ways of graduating from high school well. And I think we're going to see, especially over the next 2 or 3 years, that's really going to have an impact across all of our subject areas. Just a specific example in math, used to be we were having almost every student take Algebra 2. The new graduation requirements, you can substitute math that's going to help you get that certificate instead of taking the Algebra 2. So there are more options for our kids. That's good. It gets a little bit more confusing for us. That's maybe not so good. And again, what I hope to do today is help answer your questions and provide some clarification on exactly what it means as we prepare students, not just for one path for graduation, but 3 different routes that can help them get their diploma and ultimately, hopefully, help them get a good job. So a little bit of the background, and you might think I'm spending more time on this than what it warrants. I really, truly believe if you understand why we have these new tests, why we have this new teacher evaluation system, why we have Ohio's new learning standards, if you understand why we have those standards, it will help you understand how these tests are constructed, how the specific learning objectives that are in these new standards were developed and why they're there, and that can help you prepare yourself and your kids to do well, not just on the tests, but more importantly, do well as we prepare them for life. All of this is about the jobs. Everything that's in these new learning standards is based on the premise or the expectation, the goal of helping kids get jobs. We may say there's many reasons to be educated. We want students to be, appreciate the arts and so on and so forth, and I agree with that. It's a Rogers opinion statement. However, that is not what these new standards are all about. They're all about getting kids jobs. And they developed because employers were saying when students graduate from high school, they don't have the skills we need. Oops. Governors and state superintendents, this was actually about 10 or 12 years ago. This is how these new standards originated. From almost every state in the nation, I think it was 47 or 48 out of the 50 states participated. And they said, we understand that to be honest about it, we understand we're losing manufacturing jobs to Mexico. And we're probably not going to be able to compete for assembly line work with $1.78 they're paying for Mexico compared to what we're paying our workers. We might be able to retain a few of those jobs by really focusing on automation, and we're seeing that at the Honda plant in Marysville, the Jeep plant in Toledo, where automation did keep jobs here in the state, but far fewer jobs than used to be here. And we understand that we're not going to compete like clothing manufacturing. It's almost impossible to find clothing, literally, clothing or shoes that are manufactured in the United States. Huge industry. It's all over in China where they're paying workers 38 cents an hour. We understand that those jobs were going away and probably not coming back. But what we didn't understand is we're losing good jobs too. We're losing the professional jobs. Doctors, lawyers, attorney, computer engineers, programmers, medical personnel. Those jobs are going overseas also. We got to do something about this. This was this meeting that occurred among these governors and state superintendents 8 or 10 years ago. And the results of those meetings were these new learning standards. We know that, bringing us up to current times, about 80% of the jobs in the year 2020, when your students are in the workforce, those that are going to college are getting out in the workforce, about 80% of the jobs will require a certificate if they're going to make more than $20,000 a year. It's already 65% of the jobs that earn more than $20,000 a year requires some sort of a certificate. It can be a 2-year degree from a tech school, 4-year degree from Bowling Green State University, Ohio State, any of the other great state institutions we have. Might be a truck driving certificate. Might be state-tested nursing assistant. There are some really good jobs out there that you can get with as little as 6 months education beyond high school that have benefits and $30,000 or $40,000 a year salaries. I know of a couple career areas. Remember, a small part of what I've done, but is to be an advisor at Bowling Green State University. And I work with incoming freshmen, and we talk about career and job goals. And some students, many students, a 4-year degree is the right way to go. But for some students, their career goals can better be met in other ways, and we have to talk frankly about that. What is it that you're good at doing? What is it you want to do? What is it that you're capable of doing? And I personally believe every teacher, opinion statement, must be a career counselor. We have to help kids identify careers that they can be successful at, be realistic in the academic skills they're going to need, and what it's going to be like on the job. And we know if we're being realistic, if you're going to live in poverty, fine. Drop out of school or even graduate, but all you've got is that high school diploma. You're probably going to be living in poverty. You're probably going to be making less than $20,000 a year. And you're probably going to end up on welfare or part of the criminal justice system or both. The more you earn, the less likely you are to be in jail. And the better your quality of life is going to be for you and your family. So this new learning standards is really, truly, its origin is in getting our kids better jobs, helping them to have a better life. That's what it's all about. We can have discussions of whether these new standards are really doing that or not, but that's the goal behind everything that's happening right now. Couple more statistics here. 75% of Ohio graduates, and actually this is true nationally, are not ready for college. 40% of the students who actually enroll in Ohio universities, like Bowling Green and Ohio State, 40% of them need remediation. They are likely to drop out or flunk out of school unless they improve their skills. And what skills do these incoming freshmen lack? And I see that when I work, again, when I have done advising for BGSU, I work with that 40%. Got extra training and experience and so forth. And I work with students usually in their first or second semester on campus. And I specifically sit down and say, what can we do to make you successful and to help you be successful in school? And almost always, they need help with reading, they need help with writing, they need help with math, or all three. That's what flunks kids out of school. It's not their science scores. My subject area, I love teaching. I think science is really important, but science doesn't keep you from a good job. Social studies, the arts, what keeps you from getting a good job, a college degree, or even a truck driving certificate, is your reading, writing, and math skills. There's no coincidence the PARCC assessment is reading, writing, and math. That is why it's there. We know that incoming freshmen are not, college freshmen don't have the skills they need to be successful in college or on the job. And PARCC is designed to assess those students and help you as educators look at that data from the assessment and say, okay, this is where this kid needs more help. This is where this student needs more help. What can we do them to prepare them as best we can before they leave our school and move into the real world? That's what these tests are intended to accomplish. All right, that's why we have these tests, but why do online testing? That's a question I often receive. And, it's a fact. Take two groups of kids, equal scores, you give them a pre-test paper and pencil, and give them 2 weeks instruction, let's say in the writing process. You give them a post-test. This group of kids, they're equally matched, same grade, same IQ, same socioeconomic. This group of kids get the post-test in paper and pencil, their scores go up. I hope their scores go up. We just gave them 2 weeks of instruction. This group got a paper and pencil pre-test, exact same instruction. Their post-test is on the computer. Their scores go down. We know that when you switch kids from paper and pencil testing to computerized testing, scores will go down if the kids are not prepared. Well, since we know scores are going down, why on earth are we giving them computerized tests? Because that's what they're going to get on the job. 80% of all jobs currently, not 4 years from now, not 10 years from now, currently, 80% of all jobs require use of technology on a daily basis. This includes 4-year degree, 2-year degree, truck drivers, nursing assistants, even the person working at the gas station is going to be using, more than likely, technology on a daily basis. And that online testing builds skills that are going to prepare these kids for life. Just give you one example real quick. I had a student I was working with, high school senior, student with special needs. He worked at one of these big box stores, and his job was to bring in the shopping carts. And he had a graduation goal, a very reasonable transition plan in his case. He wanted to work inside. He had had enough time outside in the winter bringing these shopping carts, and outside in the summer when it was broiling hot. His goal was to work inside as a cashier. And so teacher prepared him, went through the manual so he knew all the questions and the answers on how to be a good cashier, what to do when a credit card is declined, all that. He asked him, he could answer it. Went in, told his supervisor. Supervisor said, great, you've been a good employee. We'd love to have you come and apply a full-time job. Sat down, said, here you go, take the cashier's test. I'm ready. Until he found out the test was on a computer. This student had never had the opportunity to take an online test in his entire life. But yet his career goal depended on doing well on that computer. It flunked it terribly, totally blew it. That's when they brought me in and they said, all right, what can we do to help this kid? He can answer the questions. How can we prepare him for the online test that the company he works for requires to get a new job in the organization? This is the world our kids are in. For most of our students, the last time they'll ever see a paper and pencil test is in our classroom. When they move into the workforce, when they go into military, when they go into civil service, most of their tests are going to be online. And much of their instruction is going to be online. And so we've got to prepare kids not for the way we test, but for the way they're going to be tested the rest of their lives. Oops. Back here. So as we do this, in our classrooms, I have to take a look at my content, the learning objectives, the standards that I'm responsible for in my content area, in my grade level, and I have to make sure that my homework is supporting those content areas. Now that's pretty obvious, but sometimes when we bring technology into the classroom, we start doing all the neat things and the fun things and the interesting things with technology, and we give this to our kids as assignments without thinking, wait a minute, is this directly supporting the learning objectives I have for this week, for this unit, for this lesson, for this day? So the first step in preparing students for online testing and for career and life goals is to make sure your homework ties with the content, including the homework that involves the use of technology. And that homework has got to relate to the assessments your kids are going to be taking. Hopefully, the content you're teaching, the homework you assign, and the way you assess them all are tied together. So when we say about preparing kids for online assessments, it shouldn't be something new, it shouldn't be something added, it's how we determine if they've met our learning objectives. And if we do it right, that's what's going to happen. These assessments are a tool to help us see whether the kid is meeting the objectives that we set out for them when we taught this content. And of course, these assessments need to tie with life skills. Now, as you're looking at these new tests, I frankly, Roger's opinion here, but I encourage you, look at them critically. And if you say this is hard, well, good. I mean, they're intended to be hard. You got to be good to get a job these days and to keep a job, especially a good job. But if you say, on the other hand, hey, you know what? They're testing my student on something they're never going to see in real life. Well, that's a different story. And we need to comment if there are items on these tests that don't prepare them for life, then we've got to talk about those. We've got to be very specific and say, wait a minute, maybe that item should be removed from the standards. And I'll give you a specific example. I spent quite a bit of time reviewing the math standards and commenting on the math standards before they were adopted. Not many of, actually, I don't know if any of my suggestions were accepted. But one of the standards, for example, every student needs to understand that the value of 0 is derived from an understanding of the law of exponents. Well, I taught advanced physics with calculus. Maybe in the calculus, but I'm not even sure there. Nobody needs to know that, or almost nobody. 7 out of 8 kids certainly don't need to understand the value of 0 derived law of exponents. So why is that something that every 9th grader is being tested on? So look at these critically, not saying they're too hard. That probably won't be received very well. But if you say, this is something that our students need to know that's not in the standards, it should be added. And this is something that's in the standards that most of our students really don't need, it should be taken out or moved to a different grade level. I think that's very legitimate as you look at the content in the area in which you're expert. Always going back to that basics, is this getting kids ready for a job? Okay, end of opinion, back to research. We know that 80% of companies require online testing. That is a research fact. And I've already given an example of one of them. So if we're going to get these kids ready for real world, if we're going to get them ready for college, if we're going to get them ready even for truck driving school or state-tested nursing assistants, we've got to get them ready for online testing. And this does build life skills. Just a little aside here, I personally believe every single one of us has to be a career counselor. We've got to be talking with kids about what job opportunities there are, probably related to the area you're teaching in. And we've got to be realistic with them. Like one of the things I've done, with my advising, I personally have seen more students coming in that want to be crime scene investigators than there are projected job openings in all Northwest Ohio. I was one advisor of 14 advisors at one college out of 60-some colleges in the state. There's a problem if you encourage your student to be a crime scene investigator. There's probably also a problem if you're encouraging them to be a fireman or a policeman or an EMS worker on a squad. Not that those aren't good jobs, and not that they're not important professions, they are. But we know that there's 20 applicants roughly for every EMS position that's full-time. There's about 50 applicants, roughly, for every law enforcement position that's full-time, over $20,000 a year with benefits. I mean, if you want to volunteer and help your local community, they're all looking for help, or be a part-time substitute. Many departments need the substitute. But if you want a full-time job with a salary and benefits, your chance is less than 1 in 20, maybe less than 1 in 50, getting one of these professions that we talk so much about and that so many kids look at as being a model. So what jobs are available? Anybody know what the #1 job in Northwest, actually all of Ohio is? Truck driver. Actually, truck driver is pretty darn good. And it's related, agriculture. Agriculture is the #1 employer. Did they say that? Excellent, bonus point. Hey, didn't you have something to do with BG? No? Oh, all right. Yeah, you should have. #1 job area. When was the last time we talked to kids about jobs in agriculture? And that's not just the person that puts the seed in the ground, though that's included. We're talking about people that have the truck driver's license to drive the grain to the mill, operate the pet food factory, operate the company that turns that grain into products on your grocery store, looks at the satellite image and determines what rate to apply fertilizer. Tremendous opportunities at all education levels in agriculture. #2, oil and gas is pretty good. Not so much around here, southeastern Ohio, it's a great. #2 is medical. #2 job opportunities, job openings, projected job openings over the next 10 years, actually, through 2024. Medical, excellent area. And that's not all doctors and nurses. There's over 100 clearly defined medical positions where you can get good jobs, some of which, with as little as 6 months education beyond high school, you can earn salaries of $30,000 or $40,000 a year. So when you hear kids graduating from college or technical school or high school, and they say they couldn't get a job, it's not because the jobs aren't there. It's because they didn't prepare for the jobs that are available. So as we talk about online testing, as we talk about what you're doing in your classroom on the daily basis, as you provide real-life examples into your homework to help get kids engaged and interested in your content area, think about how those examples might give them an idea, might give them a spark that will lead them to a life's career that really will give them a good job through the better education you're giving them. So with that as the background, let's talk a little bit specifically about how these online tests are designed. One of the biggest factors of these tests compared to the Ohio Academic Achievement Test and the Ohio Graduation Test, with apologies to the Ohio Department of Education. The reality is the OGT, the OAAs, and most other assessments that your kids have been taking in the past are really designed intentionally so if the student halfway pays attention in class, they're going to get the answer right. There's going to be 4 multiple choice answers. One of them has the term we used in class. If they read assignment, they'll recognize that term, select that answer, they got it, and we're good to go. That's how the tests have been designed up through our current years. The next generation tests are designed very differently. And one of the first things that we know is that they're designed so the reading level, it's called Lexile level, one of many different ways of looking at the reading score. The reading level of the tests is really more difficult. It's like, my gosh, first you put the thing online when you know that's going to hurt scores, and now you make the test questions more difficult to read, and we know that's going to hurt scores. What on earth are they thinking of? They're thinking of the workplace. They're thinking of what's it going to take for kids to be successful in jobs. So they did a lot of research on this, best practice, talk to employers, they'll tell you the same thing. And what we know is that the literature that we use to teach reading is at a lower level than our high school textbooks. Look at that. High school textbooks are written at a more difficult level than college literature. Now, if you talk about instructional theory and why we teach the way we teach, from the 50,000 foot level. We teach literature in our K-12 system to develop reading skills. We want students to read something, to understand it, to find the main idea, to explain the character's motivation. That's why we have literature in high school. But most of the literature that we use, for the most part, is popular literature. Even some of our favorite authors, like Mark Twain and Shakespeare, they wrote what they wrote to make money. They didn't write it to teach reading. Shakespeare, he's hard for us to understand, but if you were in his time, his language would be very poetic and very understandable, very comprehensible to someone that would have an equivalent of what we would call sixth grade or less education. Shakespeare was actually a very brilliant businessman. He was one of the very first ever to collect royalties. Anytime anybody performed a play written by Shakespeare, Shakespeare himself got money back from that performance. So he wanted his works to be easy to understand, easy to read, easy to perform, so he would make more money. Same thing with Mark Twain. So one of the things in our new standards, really hitting those of you that teach literature, are the new standards recommend 70 to 80% of our reading be nonfiction, because we know nonfiction promotes job skills much better than fiction. This is a real change. Doesn't mean we still can't have some classics. Yes, you can still teach Shakespeare. But for the most part, we need to include factual material. This includes in the content areas: social study, reading, math, arts, sciences. Look for reading resources for your kids that are meaningful, interesting, and at the grade level appropriate to your students. This is a new instructional design, and the tests are specifically intended to evaluate, in part, are your kids reading at the level they need to succeed in real life, military? To be frank about it, with apologies to whomever, used to be if a kid did okay in school, didn't get too much trouble, but they weren't very good at reading, they weren't very good at math, but they were a decent kid and willing to work hard, we'd say, hey, why don't you go into the military? Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, yeah, go there. You don't have to be real great academically to really build yourself a good career. Not true anymore. The manuals that it takes to survive, even a private first class has to read and understand some very sophisticated manuals. They have to understand about night vision goggles and luminosity and intensity and battery life. And they have to understand about GPSs, not the kind you have in your car, and how radio waves will reflect and refract, and how that can give you a false reading, and how to detect that reading. And if they're not able to master those skills, they might not make it back from the mission. Personal use, payday loans, getting a new car. The literature that goes along with that process can be amazingly difficult to understand, but incredibly important that our students do understand. Entry-level occupations. This doesn't mean from four-year high school graduates. This is across all jobs. Reading and understanding the health department regulations, how you clean the equipment, how you lubricate the motor, what temperature does the food have to be at. You've got to read and understand these manuals and these prescriptions and these rules and these regulations to be successful in a decent job today. And that's why our testing and our teaching has to change, because our jobs already have changed. ACT, actually lower. ACT has announced, probably many of you have heard this, that they're changing the test. It's going to be written at a higher vocabulary level than it has in the past. The ACT is being rewritten, supposed to come in the 2016, 2017 year. Their test questions are going to be reflective of the kind of things I'm telling you about today. So the third grade reading guarantee, you've probably heard about that. That is intended because we know that if kids don't make that third grade level, they're not going to be ready for junior high. They're not ready for junior high. They won't be ready for senior high. They won't be ready for the workforce. That's why the third grade reading guarantee is so critical. If you can't read, you're not going to be able to get a good job. If you can read, you have a chance for a good job. And throughout all the grades, the test questions, get back here, are built on the standard you see here. So, what can I do in my daily life without turning myself upside down? Check the materials that you're giving your students and start looking for materials to see are they really at the reading level that my students are supposed to be reading? Are my test questions at the level my students are supposed to be tested at? That will help prepare your kids for the tests, but more importantly, prepare them for the life skills. The homework has to be based on life skills, on the assessment, and with graduation in mind. If you keep thinking about these things, yeah, I believe it helps tie it all together. It helps make many of these strange decisions coming out of Columbus start to make a little bit more sense. So when you're doing the homework, how do I start? Begin with just the assignments. Begin by taking a look at your assignments and seeing if your assignments are incorporating some of the features I'm about to tell you about. It really won't take much time at all. I mean, literally a few minutes a week. And you can start to build assignments that better prepare your students for life skills and, yes, better prepares them for these assessments that they're going to be facing. Taking a look at the PARCC itself, it's divided into sections. These first 5 sections are called the performance-based, and they're given in late February, early March. Your building will decide exactly when your students are going to be tested. Exactly when is the English test, section 1, going to be given. Exactly when is narrative, when's math, section 1, when's math, section 2. You'll get a schedule out that says this is when these specific tests are going to be occurring. End of year, they occur in late April or May. In terms of how much time is spending on testing, are we giving kids too many tests? Roger's opinion, probably yes, but we're stuck with it. We can maybe help provide some guidance to the Department of Education on how they can get the data that probably legitimately they need regarding student performance with a little bit less testing, but we almost for sure are going to keep online tests. Even if it was completely optional, it's probably good to give online tests because it is job readiness, it is college readiness. And as we look at these then, let's talk a little bit about specific tips that will help with these assessments. Now with that, give me about a minute. I'm going to switch from my presentation into an actual live site. You can go to this site, you can look up your content area and look at specific test questions within your grade level and subject area. So talk, relax for a minute while I switch over here. This particular example actually comes from 6th grade. I picked that because it really illustrates a number of different features that you will find as you're looking at tests across these next generation assessments. So one of the features of next generation assessments that's very consistent across all the curricular areas as they require very careful reading. And they're designed so that you start with a score of 0, and every time you do something correct, you're building points. If you don't do something, you don't get a point for it. And in terms of the PARCC assessments, this is new, if you do something wrong, you lose points. So guessing is penalized on the PARCC test. Wait a minute, we've been telling kids for years, complete every question. If you're not sure what the answer is, take a guess. Now we're changing it? Think about real life, think about jobs. If somebody's on the job Do you want an employee who just takes a guess if he doesn't know the answer? I'm not sure how hot that food's supposed to be, so I'm just going to measure it, and I'm going to guess it's okay. Or I'm not sure what kind of oil is supposed to go into that machine, so I'm just going to take a guess and put in what I think is right. On the job, employers don't want kids guessing. So these tests are designed to penalize guessing. If you're not sure, leave it blank. If you guess and you guess wrong, you actually lose points. You don't do anything, 0 points. You guess wrong, you get half a point or whatever it is subtracted. Guessing is penalized. Different tests have different rules. And some of your students, actually all of them, are going to be taking more than one type of test. So as you prepare kids for a particular test, including your own homework assignments, you're going to have to tell them what your expectations are and what the expectations are of that test. Here's my homework assignment. If you're not sure of an answer, put down your best guess. Here's my homework assignment. Only answer the question if you're sure the question is right. If you answer it incorrectly, I'll take off 2 points. Now that might seem harsh, but that is how these tests are designed, and it is intended in part as a reflection of the workplace. It's better to tell the boss, I don't know, than to tell him the answer and for that answer to be wrong. Because sometimes those wrong answers can have some real serious consequences to property, to life, to the profits of the firm. So, as I take a look at this, the first thing it says, up at the top, drag the slider. It doesn't tell me where to drag the slider, it just says drag the slider. So if I click on that, and I move it, I just got a point. I earn points as I follow instructions on the test. Very intentional. We want students to read and follow the instructions that they are provided. Now, if the student is a little bit better prepared, they'll not only move the slider, but they will move the slider to the 1-inch mark. And now I see, wait a minute, 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. I don't need to remember the formula. The formula, or the conversion factor, is provided right on the assessment. This is another change. Very little memorization is required in these next generation assessments. It's not, do I remember the fact? It's, do I know how to use the information once it's available to me? Real life, like it or not, the reality is there's almost nothing that kids are going to have to remember. They're all going to have their internet device with them their entire life, with very few exceptions. Anything they don't know, like a conversion table, they can look up in a matter of seconds. So it's not remembering the information that's a critical job skill. It's using the information. So I see that 1 inch equals 2.54 centimeters. Next thing that's really important to know, some of the questions will have a statement like, select all of the correct answers. Multiple choice can have more than one correct answer. And the question itself tells you whether there's more than one correct answer possible or not. So the student doesn't have to guess or be pulling their hair out, oh no, does this have more than one right answer or not? The question tells you there is more than one right answer on this. By the way, this is a little trick, and You may or may not choose to teach this to your students because it's pretty glitchy. See that square? When the test questions have a square, that's another way of recognizing there's more than one correct answer. When there's circles, it's only one answer, and you can select the best answer. When it's square, there's more than one answer, so look for all of the answers that might be correct. There are about a dozen tricks, if you will, or strategies that are really the rules of that test. Anytime you're engaged in any activity, you need to know what the rules are. If you're working at a restaurant, you need to know what the health rules are. If you're working as a truck driver, you need to know what the rules of the road are, weight limits, so forth. If you're taking this test, you need to know what the rules are to do well on it. And the better you understand the rules, the more points you're going to score on the test. So the correct answers here are, let's see, this one. Notice I have to scroll. This one. Actually, there's 3 correct answers. This is a 4-point question. I get 1 point for moving the slider as instructed, and then I get 1 point for each of the correct answers that I find. If I don't find one of the correct answers, I don't get that point. If I select something that isn't a correct answer, I actually lose points. So it is theoretically possible, if you went through this test and just randomly picked answers throughout the entire test, it is possible you could get a negative score on it. Hopefully that won't happen. All right. And as I say, for each different content area and grade level, there's additional sections. Let me take a look at another one here. If I can find it. Here we go. That one was from math, obviously. This next one is from English Language Arts. And you'll see a couple things in the next generation assessments. Just like the recommendation is that students spend more time reading factually based information rather than fictional, the test questions will tend to focus on real characters and factual information more so than fictional. There still will be some fiction. There'll still be a question about Shakespeare and some other characters through our literature, but mostly they're going to be focused on real people that are doing things that hopefully are of interest to students of that age and grade range. In this particular one, several things to look at. Reading the instruction carefully, I see, it didn't show up very good. Let's try it here. Read 2 texts and watch a video. So that means in order to answer this question, I need to watch a video. If I don't watch the video, I won't have some of the information necessary to answer the test. When it comes to you doing homework assignments, one of the things you may wish to do is show a short video and then give the students, or in-class assignments, show a short video and then ask the students to ask questions about, or answer questions about that video you just showed them. I'm talking things 2, 3, 5 minutes long, not 45 minutes long. What's that have to do with job skills? In real life, much of the training is occurring through videos. Employees are asked to watch a safety film and then complete a test to demonstrate their understanding of the concepts. Watch an orientation on a new piece of equipment. Watch a procedure and then repeat that procedure accurately. So in real life, much of our training is being done on the computer. In these type of assessments, we're giving the students information that they then have to indicate that, yes, I understand. Yes, I've got this concept. So make sure you watch the video if it gives you that opportunity so you get that information. Here's more. In paragraph 6, wait a minute, don't I just want the kid to start out by reading the entire story? No. Some of the test questions provide more information than you need. Why on earth would they do that? Because in real life, kids are getting bombarded with information. They have far too many sources when they do their Google search to use them all. So we want to make sure students can target specific information and then respond based on that information. I don't want to know what happened as the theme of the story. Your question here is, what happened in paragraph 6? So just go straight to paragraph 6, read that, and then answer the question. A very new strategy of assessment for most of us, but one that is founded in real-life job skills. Hot dog, I can move to the next question. Not so fast, Kimosabi. There is another item to be answered. We know that students tend to look what's on the screen without reading completely the information. So when you answer a question, students, be sure to scroll down, because there's another question lurking at the bottom of the page. It's intentional. You may agree or disagree with this strategy, but it's intentional. We want students to look at an entire page of information, scan through it, find what the critical elements of that page of information are, and then respond to those critical elements. In this case, to answer both parts A and part B. And you'll notice here, they do have 4 more paragraphs they have to read. So to answer this question, they actually have to read a total of 5 paragraphs out of the many paragraphs provided. So that's helping them manage their time, focus on the critical pieces of information, get this question answered, and then move on to the next question. I'm going to switch back to the PowerPoint here. You don't have to create all these things yourself. I keep saying the best way to approach this, in my opinion, and I think research fact supports it, the best way to approach this is to start incorporating activities that look like this as part of your daily homework, whether it's in-class assignments or something that they're actually going to do at home. A lot of test practice items are available at InfoHio, in particular the Learning Express library. Something you may want to ask for is a follow-up presentation where we could come in and really focus on the resources within particular content areas. Remember I said about the student we helped get ready for online tests? This is where we sent them, and we selected some resources from this site and a similar site for them to work through so they knew what it was like to take an online test and prepare them for that real-world job test to get the dream job. Bibliographies, electronic books, a lot of resources at the infohow.org. It's not the only place to go, but if you haven't started incorporating online resources into your daily instruction, it's a real good place to begin. And again, a lot of test preparation materials in the content areas, all of the tested content areas, as well as materials specifically to prepare for the ACT as well. The other place, here's another part of your assignment here, if you will. Look at the new model curricula in your content area. It contains some really good clues in terms of what's going to be on the test. Hopefully the test relates well to the content that you're teaching on a day-to-day basis. And there's actually a color code here. This is put out by the Ohio Department of Education. And so if you go to the math one, for example, at any particular grade level subject area, it will show you green. These are the specific objectives that are going to be tested in February. It'll show you in blue, these objectives aren't going to be tested until April. And it will show you in yellow, I'm not supposed to say this, these objectives aren't going to be tested at all. Why on earth do they put objectives there if you're not going to test on them? Well, those are really advanced organizers that help prepare the student for what's going to come in next year's course. So what do I do after testing is done? Well, you might want to spend some time on yellow. Next year's teacher will thank you for it. There is similar guidance available within the English language arts areas, within the science, within the social studies. So with that, your handout has these 12 tips. This is a review of the things I've been saying so far. Make sure your kids understand the keyboard as it relates to your content area. If you're English language arts, make sure they know how to use quotations, for example. Make sure they know how to use a capital letter and require them in their daily work to write complete sentences. Practice short responses. Math teachers, yes, they are going to have to do some written responses in math as well. Explain your answer, and they will be expected to use appropriate math symbols, equal sign, dollar sign, greater than sign, depending on the grade level. They may have to use square root and some other mathematical symbols as well. So take a look at the standards, see what symbols are in the standards at your grade level, and practice using those symbols with your students as part of your homework assignment. Oops. Yes. Yes, there are additional tools in math, actually also additional tools in English language arts, such as a calculator, and you can take a look and see what type of problems kids are going to be allowed to use a calculator. When will they use a protractor, a ruler? There are online tools that students will be able to and need to use to do well within math. Likewise, in English language arts, there's online tools like spell checker, and you have to help students use spell checking. Actually, I'll skip to that since I'm on that. Practice using spell checker in class and have your student using spell checker, but without word prediction. Many of our students that have technology at home, and you will find most of your kids, I guarantee you, I see some head shaking, most of your kids have technology at home. Many of them use that technology to help do their homework assignments and their research papers already. And they probably use spell checker, and they probably don't use it very well, and they probably don't use it in a way that will correspond to the way they're going to be tested. So what on earth does that all mean? On the PARCC assessment, like this or not, spelling doesn't count. However, word choice does. This is also true on the ACT writing test, by the way. This isn't unique to PARCC. On both the ACT writing test and on the PARCC English language arts assessments and the written portions of the math and the next generation science social studies test, all right, you get the picture. Finding the correct term is more important than spelling the term correctly. Now, you're going to get full credit if you have the correct term and you spell it correctly. But if you have the correct term, let's say plate tectonics is the answer, you know, continental shelves and movement of the continents and all that. If plate tectonics is the correct answer, but you put down the earth moves, 0 points. You put down plate tectonics, this motion is called plate tectonics, full complete sentence. You put down plate tectonics, even if you spell tectonics wrong, you know, spell it phonetically, spell it the best you can, you'll get credit for that response if the person reading the test can understand the meaning of the word. So look at the terms that are used in the standards and use those terms when you're talking with students. You've probably already done this with the OAA. Most of us have some sort of word list up on the wall. Here's the words, here's the terms, here's what they mean. Just some of those terms will be familiar to us. Some of them are new, some of them are different. For example, in our testing so far, we've probably talked to kids about extended response. And when it asks for extended response, we've probably told them something like, make sure you write a few sentences. Well, now there's a new set of terms we're using, and it's called constructed response or narrative response, depending on the exact question, or argumentative response. And so the students have to know, what am I supposed to do when it says present an argument? Well, present an argument means give your opinion, except it doesn't say give your opinion. It says present an argument regarding use of cell phones in school. That would be a very typical kind of assignment for this. So the student will have to present either in favor of or opposed to use of cell phones in schools. Gee, I wonder which way that's going to go. And then you have to develop the argument following the conventions of standard English. That's the term. Conventions of standard English means follow the procedure for presenting an opinion or argumentative paper. So that means you have an opening where you present the issue. You have a middle part where you discuss the concept. You have an end part where you draw the conclusion and convince the reader that your point of view is the only possible right answer. Students, don't be wishy-washy. Don't say, some people say it's okay, but some don't. That's not going to get you any points. Pick a position, stick to it, and defend the position. That's one of the things they're looking for when the assignment says, present an argument regarding use of cell phones, or biological warfare, or counterterrorism, or whatever topic it is based on grade level. Another thing it talks about is providing evidence. When it says evidence, it really means copy and paste. When it says provide evidence from the story, it wants those exact words that's in the story. And what do you do whenever you copy something from a story and you put it in your work? You have to cite it. So if you want full points, when it says cite evidence, that means look at the information provided, copy it, paste it in your answer, and provide a citation where that came from. Now, none of this is really new. It's stuff that we've been doing in English language arts and to some extent other content areas forever. But what's new is a greater emphasis on some of these skills that are intended to be real-world skills, workplace readiness skills, college preparation skills, and assessment skills. So as I say, there's only about a dozen or so of these things. Here's the summary. Back to that. Multiple choice, pay attention to detail. Like make sure that you read, and if it says drag the slider, drag the slider. If it says watch the video, watch the video. Some can have more than one correct answer. Read carefully. The question itself will tell you whether more than one correct answer is possible or not. Limited time writing assignments, all subject areas. All right, here I want you to read this article. You've got 10 minutes to write a summary, 10 minutes to explain the author's point of view. In class with pencil and paper, or preferably on the devices. Get the laptop carts in for a day. Opinion statements, just talked about that, and evidence. Drag, drop, copy, and so forth. Skills that kids probably know how to use. Frankly, most kids are pretty darn good at using the technology, but they use it for entertainment. They don't know how to use it for learning. And that's what you have to help them do, is take the power of this technology tool and change it from a toy into a tool. And that's just so incredibly important. And don't assume they know how to use it as a tool. They probably don't. That's what you're learning today and will continue to learn and develop within your content areas. Make sure you answer all the questions, but don't just plain guess. And use all available time. We know from the pilot study, the students with the lowest scores almost universally are the ones that finish the test the quickest. Now this is tough. How do you get a kid that really doesn't care very much about being in school and sure as heck doesn't want to be on a test or be taking a test? How do you get them to care enough to look carefully at the questions, read them, and respond and follow all these other strategies? I don't claim it's easy, but I do claim it will help them prepare for their future. And you sure as heck don't want the first time they have this experience to be when you put them in this high-stake test. You want these experiences to begin with your daily homework. This is like number 5 of my 5 big points is you take a look at what's going on here. You know, it's all about jobs, reading carefully. Begin by incorporating what you do with homework, and if you possibly can, put your homework assignment online. Research, and I don't know that Marion City Schools have done this yet, but we've worked with some nearby districts, and we find that at the high school level, junior high school level, about 98 or 99% of the kids can get to the internet after school. I didn't say you do online homework. I didn't say that you have to watch videos after school. I'm saying, here's your assignment. It's available to you. And we find when teachers start posting assignments online, most kids will start using those online assignments and come to class better prepared. Not every kid. No strategy works for every student all the time. But most students like having their homework online. They find it helps organize their day. They don't lose the sheet of paper. A surprising number of parents, even at the high school level, a surprising number of parents will go and look at online homework when it's available to them to see what the kid's supposed to be doing. And to really drive the student to look at that online homework assignment, put a hint online that's not available when you write it up on the board. It's just a simple hint, doesn't have to be something that takes you a lot of time, such as reread page 23, or look at the chart on page 67 as you're answering these questions. Do odd number questions 1 through 12, just like you've always told them. Reread page 67 as you do this. And then begin to expand these homework assignments so your assignments look a little bit more like the kind of assessments they're going to be getting in these online tests. And so instead of just saying, do an odd number of questions 1 through 12, you might say, complete only those questions that require division. Requires them to think a little bit. Needs them look at the problem and say, ooh, do I have to divide to get this answer or not? Only complete those parts of the assignment on page 42 where you have to write a complete sentence. You know, you get them to think a little bit more critically about what they're doing. It's not going to be perfect. And then my hint might be, that's questions 3, 5, and 7. That kind of hint will really drive kids to your homework assignment. And literally, within 3 days of getting assignments online, virtually every teacher, actually literally every teacher I've talked to that has done this has said, you know what, my kids are doing a little bit better. Doesn't take a D student and turn them into an A, but they'll say, when I have students that are absent, they don't come asking me, what did I miss? They know what they missed. My better kids might actually come and have the assignment completed when they show up to class. Just putting your homework assignment, our kids don't have computers at home, you'd be surprised. And when you ask them, do they have, can you get homework assignments at home? Don't say, can you do your homework at home? That'll give you about 3% saying yes. Yeah. Say, can you play games on the internet after school? Oh, sure, yeah, I can play games after school. That's great, because that means you can get to the web and you can see my homework assignment. Ha, gotcha. When we ask the question that way, 98%, literally 98, 99% of high school students say, yes, I can get to the internet after school. And that means it's worth your time to put that assignment online, along with the hint that drives the kids to go look at that assignment and do a better job completing it. Standards are not perfect. Here's an opinion statement. Take a look at those standards. I talked about this briefly before. If you see something that isn't career focused, that isn't going to help them prepare for college or for career, talk about it with your colleagues. Let the Department of Education know. Students may need some time to reach these reading goals. I said, about looking for materials that are at the right level for your students. You're not going to take them from reading 8th grade literature to reading 10th grade literature overnight, but you begin to develop and encourage them to read at these higher levels. And slowly, how long is slowly? Well, this homework thing, literally, that first week, you'll start to see some improvement. And that improvement will continue to build for several weeks and stay at those higher levels. not perfect, but higher levels. When it comes to improving the reading of these students, that takes more time. Realistically, it takes 12 to 18 months before you're going to see a noticeable improvement in students' reading ability as you start to introduce more complex structure, more complexity to your homework assignments, but it will pay off on all of the assessments that your kids are going to be taking. To look for these sample items in your content area, easiest thing is just do a Google search. Search PARCC sample items, or if you're doing science or social studies, Ohio Department of Education, Next Generation. All of this is under the umbrella of Ohio's new learning standards and Next Generation assessments. Next Generation assessments is just another way of saying computer-based, focused on career goals. PARCC tutorial, PARCC practice test. This is something you want to take your kids through as you begin to get closer to PARCC testing time. You probably already know this. The state legislature changed the law, and so this first PARCC test, this one coming up in February of this year, it's a no-fault test. Your teacher evaluation doesn't matter how good or how bad. It probably shouldn't tell you this. Teacher evaluation doesn't matter how good or how bad the kids do. It's not going to hurt your evaluation. It is truly a practice test, an opportunity for you and the students to learn how to use this new type of assessment. You'll get scores back, so you're going to be able to see how the kids did, what kind of questions they skipped, what kind of questions they did well on, and then you can start adjusting and reteaching. But it doesn't hurt your score, doesn't hurt your building score, doesn't hurt your district report card. It's one of the things I think that the Ohio Department, one of several things, this is being videotaped, that the wonderful Ohio Department of Education has done. Really, seriously, it was a really good decision, I think, to take PARCC and say, you've got another year to get kids ready for this. This first go-round in February, and again in late April, May, this first go-round is practice for you and the kids. Find out what worked, find out what didn't, and then restructure so you will be better prepared when you come back next year when it is going to count. Design your lesson with the assignment and the end goals in line. Multiple choice, explain why these. So some pretty easy things you can do that won't take you a lot of time. Work it into your curriculum gradually, but do work it in. Don't just keep saying, I'm going to do it next week, I'm going to do it next month, I'm going to do it next lesson. Start working it in now. Get those homework assignments up online through a learning management system. Remember, this isn't designed to prepare them for the test. It will do that, but it's designed to help the kids learn. Any questions? Give me a call, and yes.
I don't know how cutting edge you are in this knowledge, but you were talking about reading, writing, and math.
Yeah.
I've heard that they're not going to do a science PARCC test. So what are they going to do with the core subject areas that don't have a PARCC test or elective areas? Are they just going to use the course?
Yeah, there's the science and social studies are definitely already are going to have online tests. They've already got them developed. They're going to be rolling out, and you'll be getting more information on science and social studies starting at the, 5th grade level this current year. Those tests are going to be very similar to these PARCC tests, but not identical. So, for example, the hint I gave you about the square box shows more than one correct answer. Some of those very specific things might be a little bit different in the science and social studies tests, but they're going to have similar rules. So whatever test your kids are taking, find out what the rules for that test are and help your kid practice those rules. The end of course exams are coming in a variety of subject areas. Look for more details. I was just on the Ohio Department of Education website last night, and most of the pieces of information say coming soon. So hopefully they will be coming soon. So we know for sure we're going to have these tests in English language arts, the writing and reading. We're going to have them in math. We're going to have them in science. We're going to have them in social studies. Other content areas will include languages that may be met through a variety of end-of-course exams or AP courses, dual enrollment courses with college and universities, Some additional content areas are probably going to be coming down. That's my best guess, but they haven't been announced. The arts are really the only place that, for now, are, quote, safe from getting these online tests. The graphical arts, the painting, the drawing, musical arts. Right now, there's nothing planned that I'm aware of in those areas. All the other content areas, financial literacy probably has an online test coming before too long. There'll probably be some other content areas that we will see announced as we move forward. Frank, best guess, honestly, the end of paper testing is pretty much here. You're still going to have all the, if you had the test before in the Ohio Academic Achievement or the Ohio Graduation Test and it was paper and pencil, you're going to see that test in the future in a very similar kind of content, except online. But science, social studies, math, reading, and writing, those tests are coming in this year, online. Other questions? Oh, I did such a fantastic job. It really is good. If we do this right, we've got a chance to help our students have a better life, to get a better job, and to do better their entire life. And my gosh, that's powerful. It's a great opportunity. Yes, sir. The answer is no. Yeah, do districts have enough technology right now? Certainly, Marion City Schools, am I going to get in trouble for saying this, needs to get more technology in than what you have currently. I think your district, from what I can tell, is moving towards, isn't there, but is moving towards a one-on-one environment where a student can have a device to use whenever they need it. But remember, some of this you can get started right now, like the online homework, tremendously effective. And most students can already access their homework online. And so you still put it up on the board or whatever, but you add this as a new tool, and it really will help learning. And you begin doing some activities in class, like writing on the computer. And I'm sure over time, there's no question, we're moving towards where there's a device for every kid. We might be a year or 2 or 3 away from that yet. Is there enough resources right now? No. Do we need more? Yes. Roger's opinion? Yes. Yeah. Yeah, there is some legislation out there that will repeal Common Core or prohibit testing based on Common Core. Frankly, I don't think it's going to make hardly any difference at all. If the English language arts tests, for example, right now are very heavily based in Common Core, as are most of the math test is very heavily based in Common Core. So if they repeal Common Core, it's just going to grab another set of standards, like from the National Councils of Teachers of Mathematics, for example, which have extremely similar skills in it. So, we're going to test kids in these areas. And we want to know how they're doing in these areas. We need to know if they're doing well. So, if we don't have Common Core, we're going to have something else that looks a whole lot like it. The standards are always developing. They're always emerging. We had proficiency tests. Then we had Ohio Academic Achievement tests. Now we have PARCC assessments and end-of-course exams. We're always developing standards, hopefully getting things that are better at assessing and identifying real skills that are truly important. And, whether they're repealed now or, are here for 10 years, Common Core isn't going to be here for you now. They're already working on the next version of these tests to be better aligned with real student skills. So, if it repealed, not much. Frankly, at most, you might get another year while they develop the new version of it, but they're still going to be there. We're still going to have kids that are assessed. Other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Roger. We appreciate the fact that you are tackling a subject that is probably not the most fun, but certainly important for our teachers and students to know. Just a couple of